everyone. Good afternoon. 3 o'clock, almost 3 o'clock here on the West Coast in Los Angeles. I'm coming to you from the studio lobby today. Last week I was in the main studio, and then today I just thought it would be nice to come out in the light. It's a little overcast, but it's still a pretty nice day, a little cooler than it's been. So I just want to welcome you, and we'll give it a few minutes to see who might join. And then this is an interactive Yoga Life live chat, which means that you can use the live chat feature on the YouTube channel to put out any comments or questions that you may have about your practice, and this will really spawn a conversation in different ways that we can talk about yoga and talk about our lives and how it relates to yoga, and really see the full circle element of being on our mats, and how yoga can serve our lives, and our lives will certainly be included in our yoga. So if you have something that you've been thinking about and you want to ask that question, use the live chat feature on the video. You can put it in there now, or you can wait a little bit, but if you just kind of put it in there, I'll start going through the questions in the comments, and that's what will, kind of create our hour together here. These sessions are recorded, so they're available after, and the more you contribute, the more things that you share. I always say that if you're having a question, whether it's about a pose, it can be anything, it could be technical, it could be something that's going on in your life that has come up on your mat, it could be something that you're feeling when you're in poses. There's a rich conversation that occurs when you present your question, because I'm sure many other people have, if not the same question, a very similar question, and so it's a nice way to be of service through your practice. So yeah, we got a few people on. Let's go ahead and say hey on the live chat. It's just nice to see, and if we haven't met before, my name is Joe Kay, and we have a yoga studio here in Los Angeles called Urban 728 Yoga. It is a hot yoga studio, and we have two studios. We have a private studio. We do one-on-one classes and small group sessions. And then we also have our main studio, which is just behind this wall, behind me. And pre-COVID-19, we would have a class capacity of 48 people. Obviously with social distancing and everything that we're looking at in regards to reopening, we're still closed. We're still in our safer at home order based on being here in LA County, which has been one of the busier places, unfortunately, for COVID-19 to spread. So we're still on our safer at home order, and the studio is not open, although the retail shop, if you need anything and you wanted to stop by, we could easily do a curbside pickup. We have plenty of yoga clothes, and you can see the different products and things from our local vendors here. So yeah. Hey Roz. Hope you're doing well. Where are you? Are you still, can't remember, you were up in the mountains, I felt like. I'm wondering if you're back in New York, or if you're still joining us from a further away place from what might be happening there in the city. Roz, you got a pretty good hands-on experience in regards to Yoga Life, because you've been on a retreat with us, and I'm glad that you're here, because something that came to me this morning when I was thinking about this Yoga Life chat was our retreat that we did in Italy that I believe was last September, October, somewhere around there. And when we get on the retreat and we start to blend our lives with our practice, it's part of the experience. You go somewhere, but you don't just leave everything behind you. It's like your mind is with you no matter where you go. So even when we travel and had went to Italy, our life and things that have happened in our lives, they're still in our mind. So the mind is a very important component to the process of yoga, and you'll hear teachers, and a lot of teachers say that yoga is all about the mind. I think there's a fallacy, if you will, and for those that equate yoga specifically to and only to the body. And maybe that's just something, I'm not sure, I haven't been doing it that long, but maybe that's just something that's come through the systemic process of our society that has made it more of a physical activity and perhaps not as much, even though I've seen, even in the last 10 years and being a part of it more here in Los Angeles, I've seen meditation communities pop up and more spaces that focus specifically on meditation and not just the movement and the physical elements and the asanas. So, you'll hear a lot of teachers talk about how yoga is all about the mind, and what we're doing in our practice physically with our bodies is to, kind of take a trip through the branches and take a trip down certain roads and memories and thoughts and beliefs and, attachments and whatnot, to see, where we are with things in our mind. If you can ultimately get to a point where you could at least see things as they are, versus the easiest way to describe that is, a lot of times our mind will kind of, try to make something up as to how you want it to be or something that you wish it would be. You can just look at things where you are. That's normally a good place that your practice has led you to. It doesn't mean that you will certainly like what you see, but if you can honestly engage with, this is where I am right now, this is where my mind is in relation to whatever you might be thinking about, then your practice has done a good job. And those physical poses and the breaths that we're taking have guided you to a nice place. Yeah, September 2018. Oh, you're back in New York and you were in the mountains, so, well, welcome back. It's interesting to think about. There's a lot of thinking, I think there's a lot of thinking about, what our lives are going to look like going forward. And isn't that the case, before the pandemic? A lot of people would sit, which is why sometimes people will say, well, I really don't feel that different. Obviously, we feel more, based on what's going on and the ripple effect energetically of what's going on in the, to the detriment of our society and to humanity and, lives lost. That is a direct impact. But, the projection of the future has always been something that sits on top of a lot of people's minds. And, can I predict the future? No. Can I prepare myself for the future? Well, that's part of what this whole yoga life thing is a way to proactively engage your life and what you're feeling and what you might be processing and dealing with, good or bad, and allowing you to feel more prepared or more centered or more calm. All the benefits that you've heard about from practicing yoga or meditation, but it's one thing to hear them or to read them, pick up a book, to then, experience in them. So the yoga life is the element of experience. And when we're, guiding classes here at the studio or right now virtually on this platform on YouTube, it is all about the student experience and what you're going on and what you're bringing to it. If I just wanted to, kind of pull you onto a lineage or to a line where I wanted you to believe something, I could certainly wrap my energy around that and really drive home my point. Just think about, learning something back when you were in school from a textbook, and your teacher would, give you different ways to understand and to connect and to understand, what that was. Well, yoga is not so much textbook. It's more of, living, breathing, moving, and then the combination, which is infinite when it comes to, the people that are practicing it, because your experiences are, vast and wide and unique, just like my experiences are. So, in the yoga life philosophy, we'll thread a lot of relativity to where, something that you may have experienced and then, come through and had a moment and clarity with, can be, different, but also relative to something that I've come through and realized. And there's a whole framework in, yoga philosophy, not just, what we're developing and teaching and and sharing his yoga life philosophy. There is a rich essence of yoga philosophy that sits underneath and behind the scenes of all the postures that is coming through, what your instructors are sharing with you. So you have different elements and layers of instruction that are coming up while you're in a yoga class. You're getting the breath cues, you're getting verbal body movement cues, and that's just kind of getting you to connect into the sequence, into the flow, the physical flow element of the practice. Think about other spaces that exist when you're in yoga, or other things that are being presented when you're in yoga. Sometimes the teacher will read something from the Yoga Sutras, or they'll share something from the Bhagavad Gita, or a text that is a yogic text. So sometimes that information is passed over. It's really hard, though, to necessarily understand it. I've read these books several times, and still there's so much that I don't understand. So bringing it back to the experience is how can we present different topics in different ways, and then allow you to go down your road and with your mind, and to see what it means to you. So this all sits on a bed of you, and the fact is that you're going to have your experiences and your moments of awakening on your mat, off your mat, and hopefully as you're continuing to practice, you're feeling that you're present and you're awake and you're conscious to notice that those things are happening. Sometimes when we're in ourselves, we don't realize how much we are growing and how much things are changing and how many strides we take in a certain direction, because life is constantly coming at us, and we've got different responsibilities in different places that we need to show up for ourselves and for others. But this is why it's nice to have or engage in yoga life conversations, because you may realize how much you have and continue to grow, or to shave off some of that heaviness or judgment, or that inner chatter that used to be there isn't there anymore. It's easy to get going and not even notice that to be the case. So in some ways, when you get together with your yoga friends like we're doing here, it's nice to kind of celebrate and just feel it's not that you've worked hard. Yoga isn't a work hard kind of exercise, if you will. It's definitely hard sometimes to be in poses and to breathe, but it's just nice to reflect on what this practice means to you, and how much you've shown up for it, and how much it's shown up for you. And if a teacher like myself, or so many other amazing teachers in this world, have been able to share something, and you've received it, it's pretty nice to have these types of relationships, especially in moments when we're going through some bigger things in the world, and there's many things going on right now. So Raj, you have a question here. On Tuesday in Detox, you mentioned creating a practice from something. Maybe a little bit more information, like developing a practice in addition to what we're doing in Detox, or trying to remember what that could have been. So if you have a little bit more information, go ahead and type it in. Sam, welcome, 4474. Live chat, Sam. So we've shared many years, and there's been, I'm sure, a lot of things that have happened over those years in our lives. And something that I would like to kind of put out there is that yoga sometimes gets this rap that we go to our yoga mat because something happened in our life. But most of the students that I have, and certainly this could be the case, but many of the students that I've had now for some 8, 9, 10 years, people come to their mat because it's become part of their proactive way of approaching life. It's definitely become more of a lifestyle element. It doesn't fix anything, and it doesn't change necessarily things that happen. And then you notice that if you put this practice in play, that as things happen, there's a different response. There's a different feeling that you have, whether something good happens, whether something bad happens, there's a different way of attaching to it. So Sam, I'd be interested in, kind of that reflection of your journey in being on your mat, and to, see if you have any questions or things, comments related to how you approach your practice, or what your practice has, meant to you, or how it supported you up to this point, in different ways. So if you have anything that you want to share about that, or if you have any questions about yoga poses or something that you're feeling in your body right now, like if you guys can scan your body right now, there's something that you're feeling. I mean, if you want me to talk about my foot, I've been mentioning it the last couple evenings. I can share more about my foot, but there is not a day in practice that I'm not feeling some part of my body. These practices, specifically during quarantine, been doing them with you, and I'm feeling it just like you're feeling it. I feel space, and then in other parts I feel tightness, and then that tightness turns into space, and then the space turns into tightness, and then all of a sudden that whole section of the body feels open, and then it takes you down to a whole nother layer. And so just keep peeling back the layers, and it does feel like we're getting into a thicker core. It does feel like whatever this energy is and what's going on in the world, as it's compressing and squeezing us so tight, and that's what draws up a lot of the anxiety and the tension in our bodies. It does feel like our practice is going deeper into our core, and to work the expansion of our center, and to keep us honest in our approach with patience, so that we're not finding ourselves spinning around in the chaos of our mind, and drowning in the fear and those kinds of things. So I think we're all feeling, I think there's a likeness when it comes to those that have been, I've seen many of the same names pop up, and those names are people, and that's a lot of energy, and I've seen you guys coming with consistency to your mat. So we must be kind of getting something related to that centered, even if it's a moment of calm or something that counterbalances the activity that is going on around us, because it keeps calling us back. And that's interesting as well, like what calls you back to your yoga practice, or what do you think about when you have the choice to attend that live stream class at 10 or 7:30 at night or whenever, versus not attending it, or when your studio's open and you have an open-ended invitation to walk through the door. Like, what do you think about, and what makes that determination for you? Because ultimately it would be amazing if your get it, life schedule changes, but if you're a morning person, that you just land on that 6 a.m. yoga class, the first one of the day. Or if you're an evening person and you're winding down, you hit that 8 o'clock yoga class, and it just becomes part of what you do. And all the other planning and all the other things that could interject that space don't, because we realize how important this time spent with ourselves and our breath really is. Era, thanks for joining, you guys. Good afternoon. Emily, hope you're doing well. So Sam says, I will say that I am continuously surprised at how much support I feel even through a two-dimensional practice. The community is amazing and continues to help me through both good and not so good days. It's a comfort, and it feels like family or home to come to my mat. It's something I wouldn't have guessed I'd feel. So this is why we live chat, everybody. What you just shared, Sam, is talk about coming home by being on a yoga mat. So take that statement, share that with somebody that doesn't have a practice, and they're like, I don't really understand what you're saying. I go home, I go into my house, I walk through the front door, I take off my shoes, like that's my home. So when there is a understanding, or there is an interpretation, or there is a meaning of home that is connected to your yoga practice or your yoga mat, really what we're reflecting is that this is an inward connection and relationship to being home, a closer connection to our true self or our authentic self, which sounds pretty damn easy, you know, live within my authentic and my true self. But based on the definitions that exist in our society, and all of these definitions were given by other human beings that we've adopted. So we've adopted, right, meaning based on words, based on other people's experiences. The yoga home, the making it to your mat, allows you to break all of that down. That's why, and for so much, like, who knows what the percentage is? It's not an exact science, but a lot of the yoga practice, when you're in the poses, there's so many things that are being broken down within the poses and within the breath. Because if you think about it, it makes sense. Everything has been defined for you. Like, you're not, you know, the innovator of definition until you start to see the world, as I talked about, through your experience. And this doesn't mean that it's my way or the highway. It's not that type of approach in regards to the selfishness of seeing things through my experience, but valuing that your experience is unique, and that there's a combination in ways in how things have played out in your life that is really trying to teach you something. You know, if you look back at it and you weren't necessarily in the flow state to think, wow, what is this teaching me right now? Like, you didn't know to even ask that question. Now perhaps you can look at your life through experience and realize, oh, this is what it has been trying to teach me. So all of those experiences and the combination, you know, really start to craft this message of teaching. So this is why I say that the relativity, so your teacher, use me as an example, says something in a yoga class. It pings off of your internal cell phone tower, and there's some likeness there. You get it, you understand it. It's connected to something that happened in your life. Well, at that point in time, it's no longer about the definition that was given or something, you know, that somebody else said. It is now related to this inner workings of how your mind works and how your body works and how your mind and your body communicate with one another. So this idea of coming home, this is all wrapped around the idea of coming home. And then you start saying, well, you know, if that can happen, and it feels like magic. I remember being in yoga classes and having those pings go off of my internal cell phone tower, and I was in love with those moments. I was, you know, in shock, and sometimes, how could this be happening, as though my teacher was literally living in my life? Well, all they did is they just put out that opportunity to relate, which is in our human nature. We want to relate, but you were the one that was able to define and understand and reach that moment of clarity. And sometimes it was different, many times, than what somebody else, you know, said, or how somebody else saw that situation, or, you know, whatever that experience may have been. So when you give yourself this opportunity to be home, to go inward and to be with yourself, and then these things start to happen, I mean, my goodness, it's like, when's the next one going to happen? You know, and when's the next one going to happen? So that probably is in part answering that question of what brings us back to our mat. You know, because in case you guys haven't realized, is not easy on, you know, our patients. It's not easy energetically and physically. And do you have the stamina and the focus? Because life just keeps wrapping itself around you. But if you're having those pings, right, if you're having that feeling of, you know, the opportunity to define and understand meaning within yourself, then that's probably going to bring you back, and you're willing to sit in that lunge with, you know, the intense sensations in your leg, and because as you're breathing, you're being gifted not only the energy to sustain, but also that clarity where it can come up into your mind, and then your mind can actually create that connection, bringing it back to where we started, that, this whole practice is, it takes your mind to get to your mat. It takes your mind to be on your mat. And it's all about your mind as you watch that transcended state occur, from the beginning of your practice all the way through until you get to your last Shavasana. So, Sam, so grateful and honored to be able to share the practice with you. And, this is all coming from a place where if you talk to any Sam or anybody else at the studio, and we've had thousands of yoga classes together, I don't know all that much detail about your guys' lives, and you don't really know that much detail about mine. But what I will share with you, the way that I teach, I don't know if everybody teaches this way. You guys are getting a pretty in-depth, vulnerable look into who I am based on my teaching, because everything that I teach about outside, so even the way that the poses and the cues are being curated, that has to come through the essence of my body and what I've learned to experience. Now, the thing that evolves with teaching is that I can't just teach from only my body. So you start to develop this expanded awareness around bodies and what they can do, so that, this is what my body can do, but then also I know what other bodies can do. So you'll get cues that people can understand and interpret. But as far as the other layers go, when you're getting, some emotional layers, or, themes or things that I'm wrapping around, all of that, not even a lot of that, all of that comes directly from my experience and, my moments of having that cell phone tower ping from my practice. So it starts with my practice, and then it comes through in my teaching, and then the words, I'm not in there talking about myself specifically, but all of that. So you guys are really getting to know more about who I am. And I always thought that's a cool thing that I sense for when I take a yoga class with a teacher. If I'm here at the studio or if I'm traveling, I want to feel at the end of it that I know that person to some degree. I may not know them completely, but if I have a sense of, like, I understand this human being a little bit more, or I got something or some style of understanding about that person during that class, I mean, I don't care if you turned me on my head and then told me to stand on my elbow, if it was the worst physically guided class ever. If I felt that human being, I feel like that is a true gift that was given. So hopefully you guys are able to feel some of that. And, if you've never thought of it that way, or if I've never shared that before, most of the time there's not this space, which is why I'm doing these live chats, to give, everybody some more information about the teaching and about the classes. And then when, we get together again, or eventually when we get back into the studio, hopefully that, just continues to uplift us as a community, and people that want to continue to share the breath and the space together and support each other, and then let that ripple into our lives and support our loved ones. And then, this morning I had a cool encounter. I was coming in for the live stream class this morning, and I had the back door open at the studio, and I noticed, I was just in the back there, and I noticed that there's a gentleman, homeless, because I could tell with his shopping cart, and he was walking down the alley behind the studio. And it's not like we made eye contact, but there's definitely a feeling that we noticed each other. And so I left the door open, and then I walked, into the studio a little bit further, and then I turned back around, and he was just standing there, probably like 20 feet away from the door. And he was super nice, and he just said, "Hey man, do you have any water?" And so I went in and I grabbed him a couple waters, and came back out and handed them to him, said, "Be safe, be careful out there." And it's that, that's yoga, that's humanity, that is, doesn't seem that difficult to do, but what can be difficult is to be aware that these moments are happening all the time, and that there was something felt. So just think about it. If I saw this person and I just turned around and I closed the door and I locked it, and so be it. We would have never had that exchange where he could ask for something, I can give him something, we can exchange, we could, say bless you, love you, and it's just part of, for me, it's just part of being human. But that is definitely something that I can contribute and celebrate through the yoga practice, because life doesn't normally suit us in that way, because we're so wound up with where we're going and what we're doing, and we don't see those opportunities very often. And we come back to the questions here. Ping pang situation, Sam. Sometimes the ping is like a light bulb, and sometimes the pang is like a solid truth, and both can affect me differently. I fully agree with that. When you get the pang, the ping, light bulb, ding, that can be uplifting and feel quite light. The pang, when you get presented with some truth in your practice, it's not always what you want to see. And so I feel like, depending on where people are in their lives, a lot of this is about timing. I was just talking with a friend yesterday, and they had put together a whole business and put a lot of effort and a lot of time and a lot of money into this business, and it was in the fitness industry. And this was probably a couple of years ago, and they put it out there, and I thought it was great, but it didn't end up working out. And now I think about that business, and I'm like, if that business had been presented now, it would do incredibly well. So timing, and when we're in yoga and we get those pang moments, that conflict or that contradiction or that honest truth that is given to you, and this is different than another human being and sharing something with you and giving you that tough love, and you may be ready for it, you may be not. This is just that truth that is truth, but maybe your timing is not, you're not there. Well, don't ignore it, don't push it away. It can definitely be difficult. Just let it kind of foster itself through the practice. You notice that it exists. That's where it starts. Acknowledge that it exists, even if you don't like it, even if it doesn't feel good, even if you're not ready. An easy example, and I've done this in class before, get to the end of class and I'll say, because this is when we're open, this is when we're a little bit more vulnerable and prepared to be honest, but I'll say, raise your hand if you're thinking about quitting your job right now. And like half the class will raise their hand. And then I'll say, okay, put your hands down. Well, just because you had that pang and you're like, the job doesn't fulfill me, I'm not into it, I don't like my boss, whatever those things might be, just because you had that pang and you raised your hand in the yoga class, you had that truth, doesn't mean that you have to walk out of that yoga class and go quit your job, right? You've noticed it, you've identified it, you've become aware. So now you become an active participant in opening up the portal of opportunity. So you can continue to engage with whatever that job might be. You can continue, to try different things and become more, aware in your approach and how you interact with the people and with what you're doing. It's a relationship. So doing the yoga is going to support that idea of relationships changing. And if you change in a relationship, the relationship has no choice but to change. If you stay the same and the other person stays the same, then the relationship stays the same. But if you start to evolve and you start to grow and you start to present different energy within the relationship, then the relationship is changing as well. So that it's something that panged you during your practice. Now continue and to present the openness and continue to see, right, what the opportunities are and how things are playing out. And then I've talked about this in a previous Yoga Life chat. It's not going to be something that you have to sit with and really, drive in your mind around making a choice. Like, the truth will determine this idea of choice, or you can replace choice with the direction. So you continue on your journey and continue in this direction versus going in that direction, because truth is here and bullshitting myself is over here. So really cool point. Roz, I'm so grateful for this time because I've struggled with a home practice, and through these 2 months, I've come to my mat so easily. I mean, how about it? So many people, and there's more people that I think are being honest about this. Home practice was not something that a lot of people were doing. It's not something I was doing before, and it's incredibly challenging. And I think what we have going for us is somehow this feeling of community that comes through the live stream. And even if you're not doing it live, even if a friend has referred it to you and your schedule says that you're going to do it at 3 o'clock or at 5 o'clock or whatever it is, you can feel the community, and all of you are such a critical element of that. And it's not a community in where we define and then kind of close ourselves into it, because as you're seeing here, the beauty of communities is the openness and the relevance of everybody being different. So, the word that comes to mind is diversity. The more diverse that we can be, and now with things that are going on in the world, the community starts to build the practice. When I was mentioning this morning about this horrific event that took place in Minneapolis last week with George Floyd essentially being murdered by, I'm not going to say too much specifically, but we know the story and we know that it is absolutely not okay, 100%. And those people need to be brought into justice. But, people in communities feel things in different ways. We all feel it. But those that are feeling it most start to bring it up to the surface. And then what happens? Comes up to the surface, and then the community can start to wrap itself around it, and then we can start to support each other. And so there's this element of action, right? Clear approach into where we hope and we strive and we dedicate ourselves into making a difference. And then at the same time, we can build in that reciprocity, and so that those that are feeling it, in a major way feel supported. Those that are feeling it in another way can feel supported. And that all comes up through this diversity of community and people feeling that they have the opportunity to express themselves, right, in whatever way that is. So unrelated to, this instance in Minneapolis, but when things happen in our local Los Angeles community and people agree and people don't agree, I'm like, bring all of that with you into the studio. Let's be adults about it. Let's not, create hate with more hate, but let's bring that stuff into the community and let's practice with it. Let's not just, fool ourselves and say, oh, everything is okay. Bring it with you, and then we can really start to support each other and value each other as human beings. And it's okay that you feel this way, and it's okay that you feel that way. And like I was saying this morning, take all of it, put it into the breath, let it go through that filter. And then this is, seems to make sense to me, but this is a nice mindful way and to, take on that inventory of what is, and then noticing that once we get to that point of what is, now we're starting to impact, and being prepared for whatever is coming next. So yeah, the home practice, what you guys are doing, how you're showing up to your mat, how you've continued to help and support me being on my mat. I said, I know how I'm doing it. I put out this live stream and we've built this relationship where you guys are showing up to it. So I have, this element of responsibility where to show up and teach and share this practice for everybody because you guys are there. But if I was on the other side of it, it's that element of community and seeing you guys and say hi to each other. And I'm sure so many of you, I've seen people in the ability to take the same yoga practice from one side of the world to the other and then share their experience on a FaceTime or in a text message. And that's something that we weren't doing before. So it's pretty special. It's actually very special because if you look at the size, like this is a big deal for a small little yoga studio in Los Angeles, to have 100+ people 200, 300 people practicing that class in 24 hours, but we're 8 billion people in the world, so it's teeny tiny, but the impact that we all feel, how it's supporting us and how it's helping us, during these days, and will continue to support us as the days move along. It's invaluable. There's no way that you can put a value on it. So all we can do is continue to support each other and show up. So I'm down with you, Roz, on that at-home practice. It's been great. Emily, these live streams have been my surrender and my saving grace through all of this. I never wanted to stop. I'm more committed to my practice than I've ever been. You're a wonderful teacher. Thank you, Emily. And I know that we were introduced through my cousin, which is absolutely amazing. Christine and I, we've been talking about yoga and going back and forth because I know her interest in her practicing back in Chicago, yet we've never been able to share a practice until now, like to actually be in the classes together. And my aunt, Christine's mom, has been taking classes as well, and so many family members. And I truly appreciate what you're sharing, and I'm so happy that maybe there's some similarities, and maybe you're picking up on a little bit more of the Midwest. People in Los Angeles typically don't know that I'm from Chicago. It's not something I put out there all the time, but I think when we're geographically around each other, now that I'm sharing more with you about all the teaching really comes from some interpretation and experience, plus philosophy and yoga and those connections that have happened inside of me. It makes sense that perhaps this would connect with folks back home, because there's certainly things that take place geographically that we understand about people and about people's ways. My kind of evolution and arc of teaching has been to expand that. For whatever reason, it seems to resonate with a lot of people in Los Angeles, and there's a lot of transient. A lot of us are transplants from other places, so I think that's part of it. And I'm always interested to learn about people that are born and raised from Los Angeles, and to see how some of the things that are being shared translate. So just so happy that you're enjoying the practice, and can't wait till you can maybe visit the studio here, or next time I come back to Chicago, and if I teach a class there, we could do it live. That'd be really cool. Ross says she's known me several years and practiced in different countries with me, but this is most vulnerable self for sure. There's definitely a vulnerability which is fascinating to talk about and think about and share. I think there's a huge process that is going on for all of us, and you see ways that you weren't being vulnerable before in your life, and it's not something that we need to be hard on ourselves about, but vulnerability feels pretty good. And you gotta, I think, strike a balance with vulnerability when you're teaching yoga classes, because once you start really feeling that it's about that person, like it's not about me and the teaching, it's about you guys, and it's about being together, and it's about breathing. But if you're a little bit too vulnerable and too much, still kind of working through some of those bigger breakdowns, you can really feel that it's about that person. You're like, wait a second, what am I here for? I mean, that you could still get something out of it, but I do believe that to reach that layer of teaching with vulnerability, you had to have been through and felt some of those bigger walls breaking down inside of yourself, and not necessarily be so much in the process of that happening. That's why it's tricky when you get into different yoga studios, and this is just my own personal belief, but you train somebody to teach yoga, but yoga is really not a trainable thing. It's something that has to foster. Yoga is the union, the connection, the self-realization within. So you're teaching them, how to say something and how to connect this pose to that pose. But when you're talking about a yoga instructor, you get a lot of, or yoga trainings, you get a lot of people that, do a 200-hour training, and then, you put them into a room, and, if they're teaching a class and the class right after them is somebody that's been teaching for 10 years, it's probably not going to be a comparable experience, of what is being offered to the students. And, it's not necessarily the 10 years that is most important, but, I believe that the person that comes out maybe if they went through some of those bigger breakdown moments, then, they're able to share from that authentic place and then create those little pings and pangs, as we were talking about, putting those out there into the room. But, I think the majority of the time, you find this curiosity, you want to teach, and it's just a matter of how do you engage, not with all of that intelligence, but how do you engage, with those pieces and parts of yourself that you have to share, right? The meaningful expression of who you are without making it about yourself. So putting it all back into that layer of vulnerability, and then allowing your students to take that, ride or go on that adventure with you for an hour. And we've been doing this now for almost 80 days. So, it's almost, you guys are coming up on, we're probably going to hit a 200-hour experience, which is normally the amount of hours that I would do in a teacher training and a practice intensive. So you guys are getting all of that. And I hope that as you have more questions, and if you have more questions, that you continue to reach out, because there is so much that can come through an opportunity like this. Hey, Ravi, you had a question and then it was taken away. Terry, did you get you got your hats. Perfect. So Terry, this was the other day, and she said, do you have any merch with Urban 728 on it? I was like, I have hats. So we have our baseball cap, and then we have some winter hat beanies. And so she got a couple, and I sent them to her. And I'm so glad you got them. I wear mine most days. I don't know that you'll be rocking the beanie anytime soon in Las Vegas, the winter hat. Oh, you're talking about my Midwest accent. Palm, not palm. Probably something. And when I started teaching, I was teaching around a lot of Canadians. So when I started teaching, my first 6 months of teaching was in Canada, up in the northeastern coast of Canada. A place called Prince Edward Island is where I started teaching in a studio first. So I remember, I'm a Gemini, so I'm very adaptable, and I feel that chameleon effect when I spend time with people, or I spend a lot of time with people. I like to assimilate, and I like to blend in, and kind of understand the culture and the community. So some of those things, because I was in this developmental phase of learning about being a teacher and presenting teachings and things like that. So I think some of that has definitely stuck with me over time. Nice, Terry. So anything, in regards to what you guys are feeling, if you want me to tell you about all the parts of my body that are sore, I can go down the list. But if you might be more interesting if you have something that you're feeling. I've heard from students that a real tender spot is right here, kind of on the outside of your shoulder. So there's your bicep, and then you have your bicep tendon that connects here to the outside of your shoulder and your deltoid. And this is a muscle that is getting used and probably overused in many ways because of all the planks and all the down dogs. Like, you're doing so many of them. So when we do those little stretches where we take the arm across and we come down and let the shoulder relax into the mat, it's very helpful. But what you want to focus on is getting the palms set into the mat and then wrapping the elbows in. We've talked about this before, so that you're engaging your upper back. And then the muscles, in your chest, this is a bigger muscle in my chest, and then the muscles wrapped around my back are actually supporting the stability of the shoulder. They're still going to engage. You're going to work those muscles, but you're not dumping the weight down. There's this element with the breath in the body where as you're breathing, you're drawing in and you're lifting yourself off of your joints, and versus sinking and collapsing into your joints even when you think you're being strong. Yes, Terry. Birthday is coming up, and this is just a crazy thing that happened here. It took us almost a year to build out the space that I'm sitting in right now. We were open for 2.5 years until COVID-19, and we are, or maybe over 2.5 years, obviously, because on June 5th, it's not only my birthday, but it's also the studio birthday. So the studio opened on my birthday, which will be 3 years ago. And it was, I think, a combination as to how that happened. There's a lot of different variables that go into construction, inspection, certificate of occupancy, and all that kind of stuff. And we were ready. We were over ready because we were delayed with a lot of construction issues that we had. And I think a birthday is just a moment where you feel clear, you feel like yourself, in a weird way. No matter what is going on in your life, you wake up on your birthday and you feel like yourself. And again, that could be a ping. I'm going to use this, Sam. That could be a ping, or that could be a pang. Feeling like yourself. Hopefully a pang can turn into a ping, and celebration of acceptance, because every single person is so beautiful. We just don't always see it, because we're clouded by some of those experiences that we had. So hopefully at some point in the practice we all realize how beautiful we are, and kind of hit that moment of clarity, and it's like, hey, let's do this. Let's open the studio and get it going and feel that love. So we have a double birthday coming up on June 5th, which we will continue to live stream if we're not open. We're supposed to be getting some more information from our governor early next week in regards to guidelines for the fitness industry, and that's exciting. But it's also going to, I think there's going to be different layers of that. So take a big box place like Equinox or LA Fitness or something like that. They're going to have different guidelines than maybe a smaller boutique studio like ours. So we'll see what those are, but we'll probably still be doing, I think, the 10 a.m. and the 7:30 on June 5th at this point, and then maybe by the mid part of June, hopeful, we'll have those guidelines, which then we can implement and then start to see people back here in the space. So yeah, it's exciting, and I know a lot of people have been celebrating birthdays and whatnot in quarantine, and obviously Mother's Day was during quarantine, and there's ways to keep this stuff still very special. And Mother's Day, for example, we had a friend from our preschool, amazing chef and catering business, and they put out this menu that you could purchase for Mother's Day. So we got the brunch and we got the dinner, and it was all delivered by a beautiful human being, and we just had instructions on how to warm it up, and it was so good. So for me, it's always kind of around those moments of giving, when you give to others, the the giving of a experience, like having a meal together, has always felt richer than, you know, getting money or, you know, getting a present or something like that. So the fact that, you know, we have been all together practicing, and, you know, there's probably a new person practicing with us every day. It just, you know, that is what, you know, feels good in this community and this life, and sharing these experiences with everyone, and, you know, with my family. And I've seen my son, you know, observe what I'm doing. He may not know, you know, to the extent of what we're doing, but he definitely sees, and he, you know, participates in his way, and he's holding space. Like, I was doing this at home, and not once, you know, a 4-year-old, not once did he ever come in during a yoga class when we were recording or when we were in the middle of the sequence. Like, he would wait and come say hi afterwards. And now that I'm at the studio, he's like, I can't say hi to anybody. I can't show people my toys. So I'm like, oh. So anytime I do a class from home, I make sure to ask Ben if he, you know, has something new that he wants to share, you know, with everybody. Because even though he can't see you, I know that you guys have seen him, and it's been pretty awesome to hear all of your comments and your shares about seeing our little guy. He's pretty cool, and I hope you get to, you know, when we do retreats, and Roz, you know this, when we've done retreats, like, I only do them with my family. I don't do this thing where it's like, you know, I'm gonna leave for 10 days and go lead this retreat, and it just doesn't make sense to me. If I'm gonna go do something, then, you know, Stace is obviously gonna be there, and Ben's gonna be there too. So it's always fun on the retreats to just, I mean, Ben was on a retreat before he was born. He was in Stacy's belly when we did a retreat in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And, you know, reflecting on it, I think, man, what was I thinking at the time? Because it was so hot. I think I may have mentioned this before, and we were on a little boat cruising across the ocean, and Stace was 6 months pregnant with Ben, and it was like, oh man, like, what she endured was just simply remarkable, living in the jungle. But that was his first retreat before he was even born, and since then he's been to, where did we go? We went to Italy. Ben was there, and little Caleb was there, and we also did Cabo, and I think that's what we've done since he's been born. But he comes and he flows, and he's always a great energy to have around, whether it's on the retreat or with us at the end of a class. So thank you. Roz, that retreat in Italy, oh, so good. I mean, can we go back? What does that look like? That's a place that I would love to share with so many others. I thought about doing a practice intensive, like doing a month at that place in Italy. The family was so sweet. There's like this 14th century villa restored. Took them 10 years, this family, to restore this villa. And I mean, they had it set up, and there was, I think, 16 of us on that retreat. And, you know, they're all just perfect the way they're supposed to be. And, you know, things happen and people go through things, and same thing we're talking about here. You know, if we can wrap ourselves around to support each other and to listen, and when things come up in the community, that we can involve ourselves. It's a nice way to just feel like you're not stuck in a routine, or you're not stuck in this, you know, definition of what somebody else has, you know, possibly proposed for your life. So, and thank you all so much for participating in the live chat, and you know, talking about these retreats. I hope you'll join us on a retreat in the future. I'll keep you posted. And as things come up for you, please, you know, like Leslie did this morning, she had a thought about holding space for what happened in Minneapolis. Let that stuff come up. You know, Ari, you've said things in classes in the chat, and, you know, I want to hear those things, because right now that's our substitute for you guys walking in and us saying, hey, how you doing, and you letting us know a little bit about what's going on in your life. You know, all comes down to one love, and you know, as I say, community will start local, and we'll expand it global. So within ourselves, and through our breath, through our yoga, and through our meditation, from my heart to yours, thank you guys so much. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and I'll see you tonight for detox. Namaste.